I'm Travis Bader, and this is the Silver Corps Podcast. Join me as I discuss matters related to hunting, fishing, and outdoor pursuits with the people and businesses that comprise the community. If you're new to Silver Corps, be sure to check out our website, www.silvercorps.ca, where you can learn more about courses, services, and products that we offer, as well as how you can join the Silver Corps Club, which includes $10 million in North America-wide liability insurance to ensure you are properly covered during your outdoor adventures. With Remembrance Day upon us, I felt this was a fitting episode to release. I speak with a good friend about how, as a Canadian, he joined the British Army, his experiences doing SAS selection, and more. So I'm sitting down with Jason Budd. Jason, I've known you longer than I haven't known you. You were over here in the office and we're looking at putting together some navigation courses that would be of value to the Silver Corps members and to the general public. And I figured, while you're here, let's just jump on the podcast here because you've got a really interesting background. You did a little over 10 years in the British Army.
Actually, just short of 10 years, Trav.
Just short of 10 years.
You know, 10 years.
It felt like longer.
Sure. Yeah. I always said it took 2 weeks to get in, actually. This is back in 99. So it was like a fast track program.
Yeah.
But then I said it always took me 10 years to get out.
I love it.
Yeah.
No, the fast track program. So you're a Canadian citizen and born and raised in Canada, and you ended up over in the British Army.
Yeah. I guess my background part of that is like we actually met when we were in cadets.
That's right.
And it was, I think, a Vernon camp.
That's right. I remember that.
I was in Alpha Company and you were in the Rifles with Patrick Holden.
I was actually Alpha Company, then Bravo Company, and then over into Rifle Company.
Yeah.
I worked my way through. I was like, man, they have this brand new Rifle Company. I want to be there. Yeah. And so I worked my way from each one over the course of a week until I got into the Rifle Company.
Into the Rifle. And then Patrick and I were best friends back then, and you were friends with him, and that's how we...
That's right.
We connected.
Yeah.
That was like, what year? 92?
Oh, yeah. About that. Going back a bit.
Yeah, 91, 92.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I started in cadets, and then 17, I joined the reserves. And then I kind of like on and off became what we call, I guess, full-time reserves without committing to being in the full-time. And then I think at 20, I knew that I wanted to, of all things, join the RCMP or the police. And I wanted to do something different than just joining the Canadian Forces. And I looked at where most of the Canadian bases were. Wainwright, Petawawa, Shiloh, and I'd been to enough of them as a reservist. And in Wainwright, the British Army always trained there, and I always saw their equipment, their morale when they're out in the training, and I just thought I had a look at them. I spoke to a bunch of different regiments, and I made a leap of faith in, I think, 98 or 99, and off I went. And
wasn't there an exercise where the Brits came over?
Yeah, it's true. So there was exercise they call Punjab West, where the British would come to Wainwright. And at that time, I was actually in the Seaforth Highlanders of Canada, and we were attached to the 1st Battalion, the Highlanders, which was their affiliated regiment. And I went there with the Canadian section and was attached to them for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, I think. Did a week of adventure training in Canmore with them. And that was, I think, in August. And then I made the connections I had with the Highlanders, recruiting officers and everything else. And basically left the Seaforth and the reserves and had a one-way ticket. And off I went.
The story I heard from other people was that during an exercise, the Brits came over, joined exercise, and you said, "This is for me," jumped on the back of the truck, and that was it. Away you go. But I guess there's a bit more to it.
There's a bit more to it, for sure. Now, one of the processes that actually made it easier for me was that I had a British passport through my dad. So that actually facilitated the process, but they were actively recruiting Commonwealth in the late 90s.
Right.
Like they actually stopped in the downsizing in 2005, but there was a big influx of Commonwealth soldiers and maybe not so many Canadians. I met the odd Canadian in the Royal Marines or in some other maybe English regiments. But, I mean, there was a lot of Jamaicans and Fijians and South Africans, and that tended to be more of the typical colonial.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I remember around that time, I figured I'd jump on a plane and go over and enlist with the Brits, and I saved up all my dollars and had everything squared away with a recruiting officer and went on over, went to the recruiting office, had my appointment. And when I got in there, the recruiting officer that I was dealing with, who says, yeah, you're part of the Commonwealth, not a problem. Come on over. We'll get you signed up right away. He wasn't there. He'd been transferred and there was a new person in there. And what I didn't realize at the time and what you've told me afterwards, essentially she was just pouring a bunch of cold water on me. But she says, well, yeah, you're Commonwealth, but you can't do anything security related unless you're a British citizen for, I think it was 5 years. And I said, okay, yeah, not a problem. What's security related? She says, well, why don't I show you what isn't security related? And it was like janitorial duties, and even some of the janitorial duties they said were security related. And I said, well, hold on a second, 5 years? Oh, that's right. And your minimum engagement's got to be 4 instead of 3. And anyways, after all of the information she gave me and I went through and I processed it and I thought, geez, 5 years and I'm not going to be getting a trade or anything unless I'm in for like 12 years because I can't start until. Anyways, I ended up using the money I saved up and went touring around Europe with it. But everything happens for a reason. I would imagine that had I just persevered there and just said, forget it, I'm in. Once I'm in, I would be doing anything.
Well, I think it's interesting is that had you just focused on the infantry,
you
would have been, like for myself, I didn't go there with the concept of getting a trade. I was going to the infantry. And I wanted to be in the RCMP. I wanted to do 3 years, something different.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm going to go to the infantry, the best way to get the experience. I also had in the back of my mind that I wanted to go on SAS selection.
Right.
So what's interesting about SAS selection is about that security clearance that you're talking about.
Yeah.
They regularly get people with the same aspirations of Commonwealth coming over, they do their time in the infantry and then go on SAS selection. We don't actually pass the security clearance. I actually failed it prior to going on selection.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't pass it, but the SAS, they still put you on course.
Okay.
And then once you actually, if you were to be successful through their phase,
right.
Now you're in the SAS, they just turn around and go back to whoever deals with the security clearance going, yeah, he's a badge member SAS, and you just get rubber stamped. So none of the colonials actually passed the security clearance prior to selection anyways.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it doesn't matter. Like you're in. So that's the concept with that. It's an interesting story about myself. I was in contact with the Highlanders recruiting team. So prior to that, I wrote the Parachute Regiment, I wrote the Royal Marines, I wrote the Royal Green Jackets, the Royal Irish, and none of them were actually actively recruiting me.
Okay.
Same kind of roadblocks with you, but being attached to the Highlanders and the Seaforth, their affiliated regiment, their recruiting officer, Captain Mackay, actually took a real live interest in recruiting me. So that's where I ended up with them, right?
Got it.
They actually said to me, send us your military documents. We're going to put you up. I think it's Cameron Barracks in Inverness. That's their headquarters. So we'll feed you. We'll put you up. And just show up here. Let us know what your paperwork is. We'll send it over. We'll facilitate it. You get fast-tracked through training. And you show up in the battalion. So one-way ticket. I overpacked. Ended up with 3 bags. You know, we need to go to Europe with 3 bags. Right. I didn't know. I'm thinking I'm going here, one-way ticket.
Yeah.
And got the train up to Inverness. I get to Inverness. I go to a B&B, check in. I let Captain Mackay know I was there. He sent a driver, picked me up, took me down to the recruiting center. And it became apparent that they weren't going to put me up in the barracks. They weren't going to feed me. And they lost all my paperwork. Oh, so I had hard copies when I came over. So there's no fast track to this, but the actual paperwork and process, it took me 2 weeks to get processed through the actual recruiting application process.
Right.
But I was running out of money too. I was staying at this Airbnb, and I guess it was an Airbnb back then. It was just B&B.
It was just a B&B.
Yeah, B&B. So they sent me down to the job center, and I'm like, I go down to the job center, I'm like, a place to get a job, because now that's what was actually good about having the British passport is I could work.
Right.
So I go to the job center, it became very apparent it's their dole welfare office, and a claim it's going to take a minimum of 6 weeks.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I can't wait 6 weeks. I'm going to be starving.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I said, okay. I said, let's do the process. So meanwhile, I go back to the B&B, and the owners are like, well, if you're going to be here more permanent, we have a friend that's living in France, and he has his flat that we can rent out weekly.
Yeah.
So I think it was a couple £100 a week, maybe £100 a week I was paying for this flat. So I moved into that.
Yeah.
But that night I went down, I thought I'd go check out the local nightlife, and I go into this club called Mr. G's Nightclub, and I see a sign that says help wanted.
Yeah.
So I go to the bouncer and I say, hey, it says help wanted. And he's like, gets the manager, and the manager's like, can you come back for an interview in the morning?
Yeah.
So I'm like, sure. So I come back, I have this interview, and I'm thinking I'm just going to be a bottle collector. And he's like, great, you're going to be a bartender. So in UK, you don't need like a bar license, right?
Right, no serving
it,
like,
right? I'm going to be a bartender. He's like, yep, you start tonight. I'm like, okay, I've never poured a pint in my life. And it was a Saturday night, I believe, Mr. G's, and it was mobbed. And it's not like in Canada where everybody lines up nicely. It's like everybody 5 deep at the bar yelling their drink orders at you. And it was like, baptism under fire. And I really enjoyed it. And I actually took a couple extra months off to just enjoy being a civilian and being a bartender in Mr. G's nightclub in Inverness.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
But bartenders there, they don't make a lot of tips.
Okay.
And you're making a minimum wage. So I picked up extra shifts in the morning. I'd come back and help the cleaners clean.
Okay.
But even between cleaning and bartending, I was only making enough to feed myself twice a day, basically. And then my life was just basically, so I would, let's just start from, like, say the nightclub shuts down at 2 a.m. or 1:30, 2:30, you're back home. I would sleep to probably 3 to like 8 o'clock. I did that, maybe 4 or 5 hours, if that, get up. I'd go help the cleaners for 3 or 4 hours, come back, have an afternoon nap. I would work out, run, weights, because I'm still trying to maintain fitness for the getting in the British Army. And then I would go, and Mr. G's nightclub had a pub attached to it called the Niles. Okay. So I'd pick up early shifts there at 6, helping in the Nile, and then I'd rotate up to the nightclub around 9:30, 10 when it got busy. And I did that for maybe 2 months till October, and I realized it's fun, but I didn't come here to do that. And then what was happening as well was there was a change in the system where initially my enlistment would be 3 years. And if I didn't enlist before this date in like early November, I would be bumped to a 4-year minimum engagement.
That's what the woman was telling me, the recruiting office. Yeah.
So I at the time didn't care. It was like maybe 9 o'clock in the morning, like Captain Mackay sent a couple of the recruiting Highlanders over in a Land Rover and knocked on my door. And I'm like, get dressed, come to it. And he's like, get in the Land Rover. And then I went, had a chat with Captain Mackay, and he's like, yeah, you got to get this going. So I did. One thing that they did do was they send you down for a fitness assessment. It's like a 3-day, I don't even remember. I think it was like the Army Foundation fitness assessment. It was like a 2-day program to see where you were. And I scored really well at it, to the point where I came back to my recruiting sergeant and said, how well did I do? He said, exceptionally. I said, good enough to go to the parachute regiment. Because I thought, I'm just going to go to the parachute regiment. Yeah. And unlike maybe in the American Canadian Forces, that's you join straight from the street and you go to the parachute regiment and you do their, their training, B company and so on. The recruiting sergeant I was dealing with is like, hold on a minute, makes a phone call, and then down comes this major from the Highlanders. The retaining NCO or officer, right? He sits me down and he's like, Mr. Budd, like, you're right, you could go to the parachute regiment, but if you come to the Highlanders, you're definitely going to get on junior Brecken, your section manager's course earlier. And he goes, if we're going to do this for real, let's do it for real. He goes, join the Highlanders, do your time, get on section manager's course, and then go on SAS selection.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And then so he retained me because I'm like, let's just go to the parachute regiment.
He knew exactly what to say.
Yeah, you knew what to say. So that was, so I think I started, when we did it then, it was, they called it the Army Foundation College, and then it was in Edinburgh.
Right.
So the Scottish Division, and dark, gloomy, rainy place called Pennycook.
Okay.
And up in Glencorse in Edinburgh in the Pentlands, if anybody's been there. Very hilly. Yeah. Very wet. And I think that night I go into the, they call it the cookhouse.
Okay.
And there's a distinct song I always remember playing, and it's Coldplay, Why Does It Always Rain on Me? And I'm just like, it's depressed, right? And the food, my goodness, the food, where do I even start with it? I had to get my friends to send me vitamins.
Was that bad?
To supplement the food, yeah. It was like, we definitely can get malnourished here.
Wow.
Like,
well, they got a nickname for the British Army, right?
Well, the Brits don't actually know that name, but they're not unaware of it. But the Canadians always called them the shit eaters.
That's right.
Yeah. But the Brits are completely clueless.
Really?
That's their name. Yeah. But yeah, so, that was, I think back then it was maybe a 12-week basic training.
Yeah.
At the end of it, because I was a section commander in the Seaforth, at the end of it, my report indicated that they said possibility of skipping the next trade would be my infantry training and just go to battalion.
Okay.
So the next phase was we all traveled down to Catterick, the Infantry Training Center, Catterick.
Right.
So Catterick, they call it ITC Catterick, Infantry Training Center, Catterick. It's the biggest garrison in Europe. It also has the most CCTV cameras in Europe per capita.
Okay.
I had a meeting with the company commander of our training company I was in, and he said, the reports from your basic training said just fast track Highlander Bud to the battalion. What do you think? Sir, I'm open for anything, whatever you think. And I can't remember how it went down, but we may have flipped for it.
Really?
I can't remember but somehow I ended up on training. I didn't go to battalion.
Okay.
So we were there for the first, the infantry training, I believe, was 14 weeks.
Right.
So it's a long haul.
Yeah.
Two of my best friends that I'm still in contact with was Marty Gray and Dean Nugent. Marty was from the Black Watch and Dean was from RGBW Regiment. Taking a step back, my mom was, we found out, was really sick. And I actually brought Marty home to Canada on vacation. I call it vacation, on leave between the basic training and ITC Catterick.
Yeah.
Of all things, Marty loved hockey, played, I guess it'd be semi-pro in Dundee.
Wow.
Yeah, so he loved hockey. He loved our food here, obviously, right? Well, Marty actually, like I said, he was a big lad from Dundee. So being a smart colonial that I was, you befriend the biggest, toughest guy on the course.
Right.
And that was Marty.
Right, there you go.
the thug from Dundee.
There you go.
He's actually the RSM of the Black Watch, or Three Scots right now. So
wow.
He's done really well for himself, yeah.
Yeah, Dundee.
Yeah.
Now I know where it is. There's a limerick about Dundee, but I won't repeat that here.
He's actually from Forthar. But Dundee was kind of like, they had a saying, they called it bide away from Dundee. Bide away from Dundee.
Yeah.
Scottish.
Yeah.
Jockeyese, right? But just, Jockeyese is its own language. It's basically Scottish slang mixed with British Army slang, and they've created their own language the Jocks have in the British Army, and the Jocks are the Scots, right?
Jockeyese.
It's called Jockeyese, right?
All right.
It was really hard. Like, when I first got there, like, during section attacks and training, I couldn't even understand anything being told to me. Like, I just point me towards the direction I'm going because the Jocks would get fired up. And then the different dialects. You got the Glaswegians, you got the Invernessians, you got Aberdonians, you've got, by the time I came back three and a half years later as an instructor, I could totally hear pretty much in the entire British Army, even the English regiments, and know what regiment they were going to or what town they were from.
Really?
Just by their accents, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, like, for example, the Royal Highland Fusiliers recruited from Glasgow.
Right.
So you just knew they were the Ouija's, right? So, yeah, so long story short, long weekend. Prior to that, I knew my mom was really sick. I remember waking up when I was home on leave and her crying. I remember hearing her crying in the living room.
Right.
And I came out and I just hugged her. She was crying and her whole body was in pain.
Yeah.
And I said, Mom, I'm not going back. I'm going to go AWOL and hang with you. And my mom was like, not a chance. No son of mine's going AWOL. You're getting back on the airplane. And that was actually the last time I actually saw her.
Right.
Just prior to the long weekend, my dad called me. He goes, son, we found some bad news and your mom has cancer and it's terminal. And she has a year to live. So that hit me pretty hard. Pretty devastated.
Totally.
I was a mama's boy. What can I say?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And I go up on the long weekend, and then on the Saturday, my dad calls me. He's like, okay, your mom has 24 hours to live. So that changed. I'm like, what is going on here? So I told Marty and his partner, I'm like, I got to go. I get on the train. Catterick has ITC Catterick had, there's at the time, 5 training battalions in training. So I ended up calling not my sergeant major, ended up being the guard sergeant major.
Really?
But I just called, I just didn't have the right number, and I called him and I said, I'm on my way down. I said, sir, this is me. I know you're not my sergeant major. He got all my info. He passed it on to the my company sergeant major. He had a driver waiting for me in Darlington's closest town, Land Rover, straight in, packed my bags, jet down to Heathrow, and I was on the next airplane back to Canada. And then I got back shortly, and my mom was already in a morphine coma, and then didn't really get to say my goodbyes, and then she passed. So I ended up staying in Canada for another 4 or 5 weeks. And then I went back. So by the time I went back, my training company was going on their final exercise.
Right.
So the training staff decided, even though I'd only done 4 weeks of training, I could go on final exercise with my platoon.
That was good.
It was, so I only had to do the final X, and then I was off the battalion. When I first met the training staff, they brought me in, because Jay, section commander, and then Canadian, they sat me down.
Yeah.
And they said, rate the platoon, 1 to 30.
Okay.
So you never put yourself top. So there was a big Fijian that was from Gus. He was an ex-cop from Fiji. I put him number 1.
Okay.
Right? So I put him 1, me 2, and that's how they made the section, right?
Really?
Yeah. They kind of orbited everybody, so everybody had an equal share, in this jock platoon. But you never, and I remember halfway through, the Black Watch corporal's like, Bud, you lied. Well, you never put yourself top, do you?
Yeah.
You're corporal, right? Yeah. So, I did the final X and then rolled into battalion.
In the British Army, there's a few things that you did, which I thought were pretty neat. So one of them was you did some skiing over there. And whenever I think about that, I just conjure up these ideas of James Bond or Jason Bourne or skiing for the British Army. But you travel around to a few different countries to represent, I guess, England in a few different events, didn't you?
Well, being in a Scots regiment, it's not England. It's such a challenge, right? They're the jocks still want their freedom crazy. But so I grew up kind of skiing in Canada, and then as a teenager, I bought my own snowboard, saved up for it, and was a snowboarder. So my first tour was to Kosovo, 2000, 2001, I think. And then I came back and I did my section commander's course, 14 weeks in Brecon. Yeah. And then that winter, I'm back with my battalion in Edinburgh, and I saw that there was the Army Championships for snowboarding. Okay. So I thought, I'll have some of that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Set up a meeting with the QMSI, the quartermaster senior instructor, kind of our physical training instructor head guy. Yeah. And I said, sir, I just saw this one, this competition for the snowboard. And he's like, do you ski? I said, I can ski. Well, I used to ski, but I'm a snowboarder now, sir. And he's like, well, the battalion is going to be sending a 4-man team to France to race downhill. 6 to 8 weeks, depending how well you do. Right. Minimum 4 weeks, but it could be up to 2 months. Yeah. How does that sound? Or you could do 1-day snowboard competition in Aviemore, Scotland. So I've only skied once in Aviemore. Imagine, Travis, I don't even think there's a chairlift. I think you get towed up. But it's like ski. Yeah. Take your skis off, walk across the heather. Yeah. Ski some more. Walk across some more heather. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I think I'm going to ski again, sir. And then, so you're just in this 4-man team, and we spent a good portion in Val d'Isère, France, and they actually race. So you start racing, I think we started in the infantries, and then you can move through the armies. It's proper racing. It's Super G. It's downhill. It's slalom. Yes. So I had to get back on it pretty quick. I remember in one of the areas is Saoirse Valley. Okay. And we actually downhill skied. They close it off. There's timers, everything. You're in your cat suit. And there's a run there. It's an Olympic run. And the final, you do this hard right-hand turn. Yeah. And then it's a 1-mile tuck. Yeah. And I got clocked coming through there at about 7 to 8 miles an hour. Woo. Yeah, skis are 220 long.
No kidding.
It's proper racing and competitive. But yeah, so that was, I did that for, I think, 3 seasons. And then up till probably, I think, 2005. And by that time, between Iraq and Afghan going on, the adventure training kind of dried up for me. And it was like deployment. So, but yeah, I did 3 seasons of racing downhill.
That sounds like, yeah, definitely sign me up. That's that's a part of the
Yeah,
British
I mean, that's
Army.
one thing with the British. They always big on adventure training. I mean, the very first time I ever rock climbed in Canada was with the British Army in Canmore.
Really?
Yeah. That's where I got my taste for it.
Now you got to do a little bit of rock climbing. Well, before we talk about that, did you want to talk about selection?
Yeah, so I thought I'd give selection a go. What's interesting in the UK is if you don't come from an infantry background, they make you do an all arms infantry skills course. It's a 4-week-long course. So, you know, in the 2000s, with the SAS being as busy as they were, they didn't really have time to facilitate this training. And this training is pretty important because they want to give the non-infantry, the core guys, a fair kick at the can.
Right.
Right? Because the second phase is you go to the jungle, right? So what they do is they bring one of the senior NCOs from the training division, usually the training wing sergeant major. And what they do, at this time, I was teaching. I went back to Catterick as an instructor. So I was working at ITC Catterick there as a section commander and instructor. And then they had an element called SOM Company. And they had a platoon there, the staff, that was responsible for facilitating that all-arms infantry skills course, they call it.
Okay.
So you basically show up at Hereford first, and they run a kind of like a 1-week skills to make sure you're at the skills they want you to teach the staff. And then you move to Sennybridge. Sennybridge is the battle camp that you're based out of.
Okay.
So it's basically like a rifle platoon staff. You have the platoon sergeant doing the logistics. You have the platoon commander and 3 section commanders.
Okay.
And the 3 section commanders then get assigned a section from for the, you know, they're the core guys made up.
Right.
And then the training wing sergeant major oversees it.
Okay.
So you're attached to the SS in this training element. So it's kind of cool because then you learn their conventional drills.
Right.
They're not doing any of the, you know, black ops or anything. It's just conventional. A lot of it's jungle drills. We're teaching them for
Brunei.
Yeah, for Brunei, the jungle phase. So it's really great. And then the sergeant major, him and I got on really well. He was an interesting cat. Like, he actually started in the, you know, he's English, but he started in the French Foreign Legion. And then he worked his way all the way up to whatever their equivalent to their special forces, left. And then he joined the British Army and then worked his way up and then was training wing sergeant major in the SAS. So, you meet the SAS guys, a lot of friends of SAS guys, and they have this look, but this guy had a different look.
Yeah.
But he was great. Great guy. You know, he would tell me, he's like, Jace, stay healthy. You're through. Right? Because there you do the 4 weeks in the hills. That's where you select yourself, the aptitude phase. And then you go to the jungle. And the jungle is where they select you. Right? And so you could actually complete the jungle phase, and they may turn around and say, you know, sorry, you're not a good fit. Right. But, you know, I had proved to John that I was a good fit, I guess. And he's like, Jay, stay healthy and you're in. And that's the biggest thing is staying healthy.
Right.
And I did well on the hills.
Can we talk about what the hills are like? When you say the hills is...
The hills is, so the hills is the first phase. It's like 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first week is just kind of an organized thrashing.
Okay.
You know, you do their CFT, their combat fitness test. It's the 8-miler.
Yeah. And
you have under 2 hours to do it in, but it's a pretty cheeky one.
Yeah.
And then, they're just for this first week, they're just kind of, they call it Gilbert's Gut Buster. So it's like a 12-mile run around this lake with hills. Okay. And there'll be certain phases where they'll stop and it'll be like push-ups or firemen carrying somebody up the hill. So you do this for 12K.
Yep.
Or 12 miles. I can't even remember anymore. Kilometers. Just because the Brits are like, the military uses kilometers, but then we use miles.
Really?
So yeah, like if your maps and everything is kilometers.
Right.
But then if you're doing a fitness assessment,
it's
3-miler, 2-miler, 5-miler. So I can't even
funny.
remember anymore.
That's funny.
It might have been 12 miles. It's called Gilbert's Gut Buster, right? Yeah. So I remember one of my friends from the Highlanders, big there, he was a big boy, kind of like you, Travis, right? So I remember being told by friends who've done this before is that always run with somebody your size.
Okay.
Right? So I was aiming for that. And then the groups kind of spread off. Like there's like on selection, like 400 to 500 people show up and it just gets weeded out day by day by day. Right. So we set off, this is day 2, Gilbert's Gutbuster. And I'm running along and I'm thinking I'm with this small guy. We're in the middle group. And then we come to this hill. And the next thing you know, grabbed me. And he's fireman carrying me. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Because now we're going to switch.
No, you got a fireman carry him.
Man, I got him like not far. And then my knee, like I think I hurt my knee there on that point, and then I had a knee injury from that point on.
Right.
Thanks to
Thanks.
Yeah. But I was like, I can't do this. And I dropped him. He actually picked me up and threw me on his shoulder, and then he went the whole way.
Wow.
Yeah. Besides that, with his injury, I made it all the way up to test week. And like test week's just a series of marches in areas like Elan Valley is probably the worst place on earth. We call them...
In what way?
Well, wet.
Yeah.
Everything's wet.
Yeah.
But they call them baby heads.
Okay.
So imagine a soccer ball that's growing in a grass ball.
Right. Okay.
Right?
I've heard moon grass.
Endless fields of this.
Yeah.
They're ankle breakers.
Baby heads.
Baby heads, we call them. And now those say, like you're navigating like 20K across this area, right? In Elan Valley, it's called, right? Yeah. And everything's wet. So every step, boots are soaked.
Yeah.
But if you're not sure in your step, you're stepping on these soccer balls of grass.
And you're going to twist
an ankle. And you got like
or...
55 pounds. You got the old SLR rifle.
Yeah.
And it's horrible, right? So that's Elan Valley. I used to like ending the marches in the Brecon Beacons.
Okay.
Because there wasn't a lot of baby heads. I love the Brecon Beacons. There's a few other areas that they kind of go to, but it's basically, they just set you off in the trucks. You're doing 4K an hour, and on test week, it's like you might be, they start building up the weight and the kilometer distance every day. And it's like a 7-day assessment. This is at the 4th week now.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you got to make 4K an hour. You might, there'll be a checkpoint you got to navigate to, and there'll be a couple DS directing staff there.
Yeah.
You can't have any marks on your map, and they just show up, get in line, because there'll be other guys there too. And you say, staff, this is where I am. Okay, you're going to this grid. They give you the grid. Show me where it is. Okay, away you go. And they take your name.
Right.
They could also check your weight of your pack.
Right, okay.
And
they find it light, you're out.
Yeah, if it's light, no, they give you a brick.
Oh, okay.
Or a rock, and you got to carry it. And the problem with that, there's a few guys where they're kind of underweight, and if you got this, physically you don't really recover, like if that happened. But yeah, they'll also do kit checks, so they'll give you a kit list. And not a lot of people. There'd be a few people that didn't abide by it.
Yeah, you'd want to cull some stuff out for weight, right?
Well, the weight's the weight. So
right,
for example, if they say this is 55 pounds, then you pack 55 pounds. But they have a kit list, so could be like a panel marker for helicopter or airplane marking, mess tins, water bottle, spoon, whatever.
Right.
And they'll ask us, show us your tarp, show us your first aid kit, show that. But if you haven't got that, then you're flagged.
Right.
Because they go, well, you can't abide by detail. Right.
Right. Yeah,
and then,
makes sense.
Yeah. So that's not good. So that could happen at these checkpoints. Yeah. And then you just basically, so the first day, it might be 25 kilometers you're going. Then the next day on test week, you're going 30, and then so on and so on, so on. And then the final day, they kind of bring it back, and you do, I think it's 25K. We got back to Sunny Bridge, 6 o'clock, had dinner, packed up. And then that night, you start the 65-kilometer long drag, they call it.
Right.
And I think the weights were like 65 pounds plus rifle, and it's the heaviest we had.
Significant.
Yeah, a couple hours sleep. And I remember sitting down it was on this side of Brecon where we were, and it was storming. So it was raining, snowing, like not snow, it was snowing up in the Beacons. But I remember looking out the truck and looking at all the seagulls hanging out here. So if the seagulls have avoided the sea in the middle of Wales, there's a storm on, right?
Right.
So, and I remember the DS were debating sending us up or not.
Really?
And then the course facilitator.
Okay.
And he's like, yep, they go. So off we went, and soaking wet. And as you started climbing up, it's going to sleet, and then it's full on snow. So we're soaking wet, heading up into the hills. And I can remember being on top of the penny fan, and not being able to find my way down.
Okay.
I kept falling off the sides. It's storming. I'm hanging on, and I'm like, I'd been up there probably so many times training.
Right.
But I couldn't find. I finally found my way off the fan and down, and it started to get first light, and I was so cold and checked in, and then they get the new grid, and I look in the back of the 4-tonner, and it's full of guys that have pulled themselves off. Right. So off I go.
How's that feel when you see that?
You know, I had a rough night up there though. Like I ended up not knowing it, but I cracked my ankle.
Right.
I had some bad falls going up there, but I was just nursing it. I'm like, let's just keep going. And then as I went to my next checkpoint, I came across a para and I think it was an RAF regiment guy, and the RAF regiment guy was hypothermic. We're told you don't abandon people. Right. Right. So I get there and they're just huddling, and I'm like, let's get your half shelter out, your ponchos, and let's make shelter. Get this guy wrapped up in a sleep bag, and then we have our emergency beacons, like our GPS beacons we activate. Right. They track us. Interesting for me, mine wasn't working that night. So when I came into the checkpoint, the course facilitator, he's like, Bud, your beacon's not working. They had no clue. So if I fell off the fan, they would have known. They'd find me down in the bottom. Right. So they gave me a new one. So we activated it. And then I'm like, okay, guys, I'm off. I'm going to keep going. And I can remember the look of one of the guys that was there, like, don't leave me. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay. And I'm like, okay, and it took the directing staff with the Land Rover. They got up to us maybe an hour later. This time you're cold, starting to get hypothermic yourself, body shutting down. And the DS go like, hey, you're all done. And I'm like, no, I'm going, staff. So they radioed down to the course facilitator, came back up, and they're like, great, but if you do this on your own. We're signing off. Like, this is your risk. You accept it. Yeah. Like, I got it. Yeah. Off I go. And I had about, I went another 15K. So I'm probably about 35, 40K into my 65. And I was just like, that sitting for that hour and a half, it was just
zapped you.
It just zapped. Yeah. Yeah. And then I got there and I said, I can't go on. So I had it took me a few months to recover from that cracked ankle and everything. Because my goal was just now, I knew I was really injured, to just complete the march. Right. And then hopefully they would have kept me and get better and then go on to the jungle phase, right? So.
Well, they do selection twice a year, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so summer selection, winter selection.
Yeah.
And you took it upon yourself to say, you know what? I'd rather do this in the wintertime.
So you're right, Trav. It kind of worked on a timeline. Okay. And it was just like, I was coming to the end of my my 2 years as an instructor, and I'm like, this is the time to go. Okay. And leading up to that, though, like, I had trained for a year for it. Right. Right. So I, as an instructor, was allotted a lot of time to train. And then also being for 6 months attached as the training team for the Solar Arms, I was really, like, I was peaking at where I should be. Right. Skills, fitness, and everything. This was the time. Yeah. I come back, heal up, finish my time at ITC Catterick, and then I go to my battalion, and it was the time we were doing work up to go to Iraq. Right. So we had a big exercise in Suffield, and then off we went to Iraq. Right. And then I was up in LMR with Bravo Company and the Highlanders. Right. About halfway through the tour, I ended up doing a pre-course for my senior Brecken, platoon sergeant's course. The Royal Highland Fusiliers, who were based in Cyprus, ran it because they weren't deployed there in Cyprus. So a Highlander, about maybe 8 or 10 of us left Iraq to go to Cyprus to do our pre-course. So for us to go on these career courses, it's a competition. So there might be 3 section members going to Brecken, and there might be 3 spots for senior Brecken. So it's a competition the whole way. It's very competitive. Right. Did my 2 weeks pre-course to get selected, and then ended up going down to Wales again. Right. I got to know Brecken really well. Yeah. 2007, I decided to give selection another go. Right. The problem this time, I didn't have enough time to train. Okay. Because, being a platoon sergeant in the battalion, it didn't help either. Like, I was a single sergeant. So being a single sergeant, you got a lot of tasks and deployments. Okay. I remember being told, hey, Sergeant Bud, we're doing you a favor. We're sending you back to Canada. I'm like, great. Recruiting NCO in Vancouver. They're like, no, range safety in Suffield. Just to, rent a car, go home on the weekend. I'm like, it's like a 16-hour drive from Suffield. Like, it's quicker to fly from Heathrow to Vancouver.
No kidding.
So I think we did 3 months of range safety with the Green Jackets battle group. Okay. They're going to Iraq. So that doesn't help.
Yeah.
Doing range safety for my training. So that was like September, October, November.
Yeah.
So I basically had December to train, and then I went back on selection in January because I'm just like, I'm doing it. I got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of double-edged because I knew what to expect.
Right.
So I'm like, I don't need to train as much. I say, you know what to expect. Like on Gilbert Gutbuster, I never left this Gurkha. Right? This Gurkha and I were partners. Like I was like a bungee cord on him. So when it came to fireman carry, he was just like this little guy,
that
little Sherpa, right? And then he could carry me no problem. So if people don't know who the Gurkhas are, there are elements of our British Army that we recruit from Nepal. And that tradition, the Gurkha tradition, is maintained in the British Army and the Indian Army. So yeah, I mean the average height's probably 5'1", 5'2".
Perfect.
It was perfect. Yeah, so that element's good to know.
Yeah.
But I mean, the rest of it didn't do me many favors, and I because I didn't have the time to train for the first 2 weeks, I was really struggling making the times. Yeah, I didn't have the same mindset this time around. On week 2, at the end of it, they call it the fan dance.
Right.
You go up Penny Fan down the Roan Road back.
Yeah.
For us, it's pass or fail, and then we go on to the 3rd week. And there was a new element started in the British Army called the Special Reconnaissance Regiment.
Okay.
And it was fitting under the SF tier. And they were part of the hills for the first 2 weeks.
Okay.
And their pass and fails fan dance, and then they go to their infantry camp. And there was a guy, I was on the back of the 410er driving out to the Story Arms to start our fan dance. And he was on my first selection. And then he was on selection for Special Reconnaissance Regiment. And I'm sitting there going, oh man, I made the wrong mistake. But all my SAS buddies that I did have were like, yeah, don't join the Special Reconnaissance Regiment. You do. And I'm like, yeah, SAS for nothing, right?
Right.
I'm sitting there going, man, I made a mistake. I should have seen, but it is what it is.
Everything happens for a reason.
It does, yeah. I mean, I got to test week again, but on day 3 and 4, my Achilles swelled up like a golf ball, and then I got medically RTU'd again, and that was that.
Right.
So, yeah, like that was January. So another glutton for punishment.
Totally.
And, went back and did a summer selection.
Okay.
Like he came off on the hills, my first one too. He had a groin injury and he didn't make it. Second one blew the summer away, no problem.
Yeah.
And he just cruised through it.
Really?
And he even said summer, but it was that timeline. I'm like, I got to do it now.
Oh man.
Right? Because, back in my head travel, I was actually getting ready to leave the Army, I thought.
Right.
So I was just ticking boxes.
Right.
Like seniors, I didn't plan to do seniors. I planned like junior Brecken, SAS, back to Canada.
Yeah.
It didn't work out. And then seniors came up. And then surprisingly enough, that was January. That took up to February. I'm getting ready to, I was kind of in limbo. I couldn't really decide if I was staying or going. Because I actually did really well. All in all, I think I made platoon sergeant in 6.5 years.
That's pretty fast.
That's pretty fast. Even like in the British Army, that's like 8 to 12 years. You kind of,
right.
I mean, I came in with a lot of experience. And in that time, I went to Kosovo, I went to Bosnia, I did my, I only did a couple weeks in Northern Ireland. I didn't go there long enough to get my medal. Well, that was one of the reasons why I did join. I was like, I want my Northern Ireland medal, but yeah, that didn't happen. But, did junior Brecken. And then for us, like the part of your career development, you go to the depot to teach. And I had that exposure in Catterick and actually did really well in Catterick. And you get graded, and the highest grade you get is like OY1.
Okay.
That's the highest. So that's like, they call outstanding 1.
Okay.
So that actually got me on my commanding officer's radar. He didn't realize that I was just another section commander. So that gets flagged OY1. I was the senior section commander when we deployed to Iraq.
Right.
We were an armored infantry battalion at this point because we were stationed in Germany now.
Yeah.
And we were in Warriors, and I hated Warriors.
Okay.
Because everything I've done is rifle company prior to this, or dismount.
Right.
or light roll.
Okay.
Right. So I facilitated never being trained on the Warrior. Gunner, commander. So that always defaulted me to dismount.
Okay.
That always made me, like, I had some other roles, like I would be the smaller arms coordinator for the company. So if there's any ranges need to be run,
Right.
like we went through a qualifying all the drivers, crew commanders and gunners with their handgun.
Right.
We were using Brownings at the time. So I coordinated all that training.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of like the small arms subject matter expert for the company.
Right.
So, and then for the platoon, like I was the senior section commander. So I got another OI1 assessment done.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Your confidential report for the year.
Okay.
So that gets you kind of flagged really well at seniors. And what happens is that you sit the board.
Mhm.
So how I kind of explained the board, when you get promoted, there's a bunch of like brigadier generals sitting in Edinburgh Castle and sit around and they actually grade you.
Okay.
So normally you need 4 years in rank
Yeah.
and that career course. So because I had 2 OI1s and I'd only been a section commander for 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
but those 2 OI1s allowed me to sit the board early.
Ah, okay.
So that's how I got fast tracked through the system.
Right.
Because I sat the board early and got promoted to platoon sergeant. So, and then went off to selection, injured again on the hills. And then the RSM and I are trying to figure out where's my career path. Because I'm like, well, maybe I'm done. I've ticked
Right.
all my boxes. I'm done everything. And then he's like, well, I need a training NCO to go to Africa. I
Mhm.
can't even remember.
Yeah.
And then at this time, I thought about Pathfinders
Okay.
and 16 Air Assault was now kind of like, it's growing
Mm-hmm.
to a larger, it used to be like a platoon and it's actually now tri-service and they actually have their tri-service selection.
Okay.
Similar to the Hills, but they do 3K an hour versus 4 and then they do their own camp.
Okay.
And then I believe the company commander was from Two Scots, Royal
Okay.
Scots. So I knew him from Catterick. So it was open tri-service. And then one of the options as well, I had been assigned to the sniper platoon
Right.
in the Highlanders because we had a sniper platoon. And prior to that, I was always trained a sharpshooter.
Mm.
What the RSM's like, okay, well, here's kind of the career path that I'm thinking is like, go to Africa for a month. I need you to go here. Then you go down and do your sniper platoon or your sniper course.
Mm-hmm.
So then you can take over as a platoon sergeant for the snipers. Because the sniper platoon in the Highlanders, it's the only platoon where the platoon commander is a color sergeant.
Okay.
So that's a ranked staff
Right.
sergeant, where the rest of the platoons, you always have a platoon commander.
Right.
So the platoon sergeant would be the platoon sergeant, and then the platoon commander is a color sergeant. So I would have taken over as platoon sergeant. And then he goes, I know you're going to train on the weekends, and then you roll into your PF selection. I'm like, great, good plan. I leave, and on the way out, the battalion adjutant's like, Sergeant Bud, happy where you're going? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to Africa, sir. He goes, no, you're going to Afghan. I'm going to Afghan. And he goes, yeah, you're chipping out here in about 7 to 10 days. And usually there's a build-up.
Yeah.
Like in Canada, it's 6 months to a year.
Right.
Britain's usually about 3 months. He's like, yeah, you're out here in about, they go, sir, we need to talk about this. So I go in and have my meeting. It's like, the Grenadier Guards are taking the omelette,
Mm-hmm.
which is the training advisor's role. And there's a company of leftover privates that don't have any hierarchy or headshed.
Right.
So he's said they need a platoon sergeant. And I'm sending you and another Highlander corporal section commander to go with his element. So what happened was the brigade commander realized that he had this rifle platoon that was being coordinated to guard camps. That's what they
Right.
thought this was the staffing was going to be.
Right.
And it ended up, he's like, yeah, this is going to be a brigade strike company.
Oh, wow.
So they ended up facilitating a lot of the command element from across the different infantry regiments
Mm.
to staff up this strike company. So they actually were building up, but what they needed was a continuity NCO to go out
Right.
and get familiar with the area we're going and all that. So like I was planning on leaving
Yeah.
and coming back to Canada. I'm like, I go to my dad. I got one more tour, Dad. Got to go to Afghan. And I thought that'd be enough because prior to that, I've done Northern Ireland, Kosovo, Bosnia, Iraq,
Mhm.
and now Afghan
Right.
in a short period of time.
Yeah.
Right.
Very short.
So I'm like, all right, let's go. And I ended up getting attached to 405 Commando Zulu Company down in Garmazir.
Okay.
And Garmazir is the furthest south of any British element. And it's like 30 miles from the Pakistan border. And it was a gateway for the Taliban coming across from Pakistan.
Right.
And then they would co-locate in this area, take on this company, British company, and then bypass and go out. So it was kind of like a training depot for them. And the British in this area couldn't go any further because they needed that golden hour to fly back to Camp Bastion if you're injured. So that was kind of like the Brits were dug in here. And it was interesting. They were on, there's this hill called Jaitak Hill that the British had occupied and made in the 1800s, 1850, or I'd have to look at the dates when they were there again. And here we are again on top of that with the Union flag, British Union flag on top of that, on the same mound.
Wow.
You know. But that ended up being about a 7.5 month tour. So I was attached to the Royal Marines for about 4 weeks. One of the tasks was we had the new 338 sniper rifle. Learned that rifle, like it wasn't even in the UK, it was literally out there. Know the ground, get familiar with the ground. And then when our company came out, that continuity can be carried over to the relief in place happenings. I was attached to the company sniper section for about 4 weeks and got them up to speed, and then handed off to their section commander. And then I took over as a platoon sergeant with my platoon, which I'd never met before. The only guy I knew was my section commander from the Highlanders, Big Alex. Yeah. And it was getting to know this new group of guys that I'd never met before.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow, that'd be quite an experience.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when you came back and you said, "Hey, Trav, let's go for a hike." And okay, yeah, let's go for a hike. Now I'm 6'6", 250 pounds. We're going up the hillside, and I guess there's a couple things that stood out at me. Like number one, your ability to just go. Like you'd pick a pace. I'm like, my God, why is he going so slow? But you don't stop, and you just keep going and going and going. Which over time, of course, that's not slow. It's quite a bit more efficient. Yeah. But the other thing that really stuck out was there's another fellow that we're with. I think he was having an issue with his boots at the time and had a little bit of an issue. And he said, "Okay, stop. We're going to stop right here. You, Dennis, administrate yourself, right? And we're going to keep going." And of course, at the same time, I had an issue. I'm like, "Oh, thank God, Dennis has got something here so I can take care of mine." But the idea behind whenever something small, I'm like, you know, it's just something small on my boot at the time, right? And just stop, administrate yourself, and keep on going. And that whole mentality of not necessarily slow and steady, but steady pace. And whenever something comes up, attack it and deal with it was completely new to me. And the amount of distance that we covered in a short period of time and on subsequent runs, the amount of mountains and hills that you and I have done together that prior to that, I wouldn't have been doing. I'd be going as fast as I can and then burn out of steam and then having a rest. And I don't know if that's something that you got from the British Army or if that was more something you got in preparation for SAS selection there.
You know, Travis, you know that concept of, you know, fix a problem when it's small?
Right.
It's kind of common, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, feet for an infantryman is probably your biggest asset.
Yeah.
Your boots got to fit. So I was the type of person, I didn't believe in blisters. I don't believe in breaking boots in.
Right.
They fit out of the box or they don't.
Okay.
So I would buy a new pair of boots. So at the time, the boots were issued were crap. One thing I did on my about the British Army, well, in the infantry, we could pretty much wear anything we bought. Where as long as it was DPM or green or black, we could use it. So I was kind of proud that the only thing I went on SAS selection that was issued was socks. So I had everything else I bought, right? As a kit monger, they called us.
Yeah, right? Yeah. You're not a kit monger anymore. Not at all.
You should see my, I have a sea can of climbing and ski gear.
I know you do.
You don't want to know how many skis I have. Yeah, so I would trial the boots once. I would allow myself to get blisters once. And if I got the second time, they're gone.
Right.
Right? So I didn't believe in blisters. It's like, fix it. But for sure, like if there's a problem, I'd rather like, you know, because as you know, I'm an apprentice ski guide with the Association of Canadian Mountain Guides. It's like client care. Hey, I need you to tell me I have blisters. We need to fix this now, right?
Right.
But you know, Travis, like that lesson doesn't always apply, right? For example, like I think 3-4 years ago, Mount Hector, I think it's 14,000 feet in the Canadian Rockies. I was building my resume to apply for apprentice ski, and we were ski mountaineering with my partner Steffi. We looked at the weather window, and it was cold and clear, but the avalanche conditions were stable. Like, I'm like, we got to go.
Yeah.
This is when we're doing it. We get up super early and we're heading up Mount Hector. And I had the biggest burly gloves, these Eteric gloves on.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that there's a gully that we had to boot pack up. And I didn't have the drawstrings. They were like these overcuffs over it. And there were snow crystals falling inside. And then they were melting.
Yeah.
But I'm working hard. Skis on the pack, and I'm like, I'm warm.
Yeah.
Probably minus 25,
Right.
but I'm warm. So part of that concept was like soldier on through it.
Right.
So now we're above the gully and we're ski touring up, and we're getting close to the summit. And now the wind chill is hammering us, and it's probably, I think with wind chill, Steph said it was like minus probably 40.
Wow.
40, 50, right? And thinking back to my first selection, I remember there's this night nav march. So after Gilbert Gutbuster, that night you do a night nav, and you're in a team of 4.
Okay.
And you do like 16K.
Yeah.
So, and it's all night. And then you get about an hour's sleep and you get back, and then you do a day.
Wow.
And it's like that Thursday into the Friday. That's a long day. This is like, I think the end of week 1. But I remember going up in that evening, and it was the last time I ever used a Camelback.
Really?
My lesson learned. Yeah, we're allowed Camelback. We still have to carry 2 water bottles.
Yeah.
But my straw froze.
Okay.
Going up on this ridge. My straw froze. I can't get water. And then I think my right eyeball froze as well. And now I've got no water, and I get up there, and the groups are moving at this group's pace, and it's like 2 a.m, and they're just going. Like, you can't stop. You need to sort myself out, and it's just like, it was horrible, dehydrated and everything.
No kidding.
So coming back to Mount Hector, I remember my hands being so cold.
Yeah.
And I remember it was the last break before the summit, and I remember I had a new dry pair of gloves in my bag.
Yeah.
But I'm like, there's no way. I didn't realize that the snow had gone down on my gloves, and what's happened is that it melted.
Yeah.
And there's a fleece element, like a liner, and then the hard Gore-Tex leather shell. So that fleece pushed all the moisture out, but it couldn't pass through
the Gore-Tex.
The Gore-Tex. Yeah. So it was like this ice shell formed in between my finger and the shell.
Right.
My hands were cold, but manageable. I'm like, I remember seeing these dry pair of gloves going, there's no way they're going to be as warm as the gloves I have on.
Right.
I didn't change, but my instinct said change your gloves, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So we carry on, get to the summit, take our skins off for our skis, drop in, beautiful ski down.
Yeah.
Like going up probably took us 6 hours, 7 hours to get there.
Yeah.
We were back at the truck in like 40 minutes.
Wow.
We're high-fiving, get some great photos, get into Tacoma, and we're driving back to the hostel where we were moving hostels at night, so we had to grab our gear and we were going to head into another hostel in town. And I remember just 2 minutes driving down the road, and I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah, you did it.
And the pain just hit me. We were just only a couple of minutes. We got to the hostel, and I gave myself frostbite in my pinky.
Yeah.
And I gave frost nip in every other finger.
Right.
And the pain was so, like that frostbite in the pinky, like I was incapacitated.
Wow.
Like I had to sit at the table and just moan. And then like Steph had to do everything, load us up in the Tacoma, drive to the new hostel.
Yeah.
And that night, like incapacitated, didn't sleep. And then we decided to go to the hospital. Like my pinky is black.
Wow.
Right. And the doc's like, we already booked some more nights up in the Wapta, up in the Bow Hut, and can do some ski touring. And the doc's like, oh yeah, it's great. You get another re-injury and we amputate in August. So we look, I go, that's our trip done.
Yeah,
right?
no kidding.
So I think that was February. So we came back. So that lesson, Trav, like I had the gear, I know better. It's that I find now if something's telling you that instinct, that voice,
that's huge. That's huge.
It's huge. Like you should do that. Listen to it. Like this is change. I need to change my gloves now.
Right.
Change your gloves. I need to do this. That is, I think that voice has kept a lot of people alive.
Gavin de Becker, a fellow by the name of Gavin de Becker wrote a book called The Gift of Fear.
Yeah.
And essentially, aside from it being a great big sales pitch for his company, which a lot of it is, the underlining thread in it was we have a voice inside of us that is essentially an instinctual voice that we should probably listen to. If it talks about you walk into a bar and spidey senses say, this isn't right. This is not a safe place to be. But then you start trying to think about it. Oh, no, I'm safe. I'm a big guy. I can take care of myself. He says, you know what? Just listen to the voice. Maybe it's time to take off and leave.
And, I think that voice, Trav, it's interesting that you brought that up because, the British Army in Northern Ireland, they call it the absence of the normal. So they're training you to observe this. So, for example, like kids on this street playing soccer, football.
Yeah.
And then no kids on that street. Well, that's a good common indicator. Don't go down that street.
Right.
So I kind of noticed in Iraq at night, and during the night, we did most of our work during the night. It seemed like we surrendered a lot of the area to the insurgents during the day, and then we took over the night. They didn't like the day. We didn't operate a lot during the day. They didn't operate a lot during the night. But one thing I kind of noticed was that dogs really barked for us.
Okay.
But they were silent for the locals and insurgents. So that was a common indicator for me, was that if something was amiss, was silent dogs.
Interesting.
Right? I don't know if the owners took them in or what, but that was just an indicator. And then I kind of in Afghan, I don't know how I kind of homed these senses, but I realized that animals sense energy.
Okay, yeah.
And just prior to maybe an ambush being sprung or something, I just found the calmness. Calm before the storm.
Interesting.
Right? And even to the point where I even found mosquitoes not biting. I don't know how weird or anything, but
well, maybe it's something, and maybe it's a mosquito thing, or maybe it's something that your spidey senses are going, you've got it back there, and you just happen to be noticing these other things that are correlating. And
I think that's exactly it, Travis. It's our powers to observe our surroundings around us.
Right.
So I remember when, I'm back in Canada now, and my girlfriend at the time, we went to watch a movie in Maple Ridge.
Okay.
In the new theater they had there.
Yeah.
And I walk in and something just didn't feel right.
Right.
Just observing. And I go to my girlfriend and I'm like, we need to leave now. And she knew me well enough not to question my sense of something's not and just as we left, there was a big police takedown undercover on some organized gang members that were there.
Interesting.
And she's like, I'm never going to doubt your sense.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
I can't advocate enough to listen to that. Whatever it might be, big or small, just listen to it.
Yeah. So that was just another example of my gut didn't feel right about it. And, moving into the guiding world, that intuition is huge. Right? That's so part of your terrain assessment. And, in ski guiding is a lot of times it's like, what is my gut telling me?
Right.
And why is it telling me this? Right. So that's pretty important for sure.
Maybe we should take a look at doing a bit more work on the navigation courses that we're putting together, and maybe we'll come back and talk about those at a later time too, because you were relaying some pretty cool stories about, and some humorous ones as well, about navigation issues with the British Army. I think you had one over in Africa there too.
Yeah.
Jason, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
No worries, Jeff. Thanks.